we'll start to get started. I'm Danny Williams. Hi, brother. Welcome. That is right. We could get Reverend Bill Kern to sit down. I think we could get started. Oh, praise God. Amen. This has been good, hasn't it? I had one question from one of the guys. I don't think he's in here now, but anyway, he asked me if this is duplicatable. Can we establish this in another part of the state? And I said, absolutely. That we started in Oklahoma City at the Capitol, and that's where we began. And from there, we came to Weatherford. We're actually going to Tulsa probably in January of this year. Stratford, Oklahoma wants to do a project down there. And then there's one that my friend J.J. Humphrey, the state representative from Lane, Oklahoma, wants to do one down in their neck of the word. He wants to do with redneck and cowboy people. So yes, this is available. If you'll just talk to Brother Bill Ledbetter, we'll get the dialogue beginning and try to get dates and things lined down. Our next speaker is an unusual man. He's probably the only one I've seen here that flew in today. He finally talked his wife into letting him get an airplane. I've heard about it for about 2 years. Now it's become a reality. He must be quite a schmoozer. But Senator David Bullard graduated from Southeastern Oklahoma State University with a Bachelor of Arts in Social Studies Education and an earned Master of Education in Educational Administration from Lamar University. He has spent the last 15 years teaching the foundations of this great nation, and you're going to find that out in greater detail here in a minute. From the faith and grit of our forefathers to the sacrifices endured by many to secure our freedoms. He's an award-winning AP teacher, taught advanced placement, United States history. You taught it right, is that correct? You didn't teach the tomfoolery stuff they're teaching today, right?
Yeah, I taught originalism, so
okay.
Yes.
And Constitution, he's married his wife in 2002, and she currently serves as an administrator of a local public high school. David's an Oklahoma State Senator, of which to all Oklahomans need to bow. Serving the people of District 6 in southeastern Oklahoma. And David and his family live in Durant, and their kids attend the local public school there. But I want to say this personally about David. When I first got to the legislature, I sat in a room with 100 people I didn't know. And I said, Lord, open the door, show me. And it started with Representative Todd Russ and about 3 or 4 other people. And then Senator Bullard, somehow we got connected, and we started working together, House and Senate, on God's agenda. And I will tell you that I have the ultimate, absolute confidence in Senator David Bullard, his anointing, his calling. I believe he's going to be in leadership in the very near future in the Senate, which is going to help us get God's agenda accomplished. But, you know, we're dealing with spiritual warfare, and so be sure to pray for Senator Bullard, because his leadership is critical in the Oklahoma State Senate. David, have fun, brother.
Yeah, thank you, man. Do I have to stand up here, I guess? Is this one mine? Is it working? Naturally, no. I may have to get you just to advance the slides for me if that's okay, but as we'll go. Well, as I said when I stood up earlier, let me tell you something first. Showing up, step number one. Amen. So the fact that you're here is a big deal to a lot of people, because for too long in our country, what we have seen is that people are not willing to show up. The Christians for too long in the church have been told you have to be little church mice. And so you just stay quiet over there and you do your thing. And it's as like Dr. Piper said, too many of them have said, well, we won't talk politics here. So what the left figured out very, very quickly is, let's make everything political. And yet what we have failed to understand is that which Abraham Lincoln said, it wasn't Abraham Lincoln, it was Ronald Reagan. I'm just a few years apart. Ronald Reagan said there is not one issue under the sun that the Bible does not cover. So we are to a point where we're going to wake up, or our grandkids, as Reagan said, we'll spend our sunset years trying to explain what freedom was once like. Let me tell you a little bit of story about me, and then we'll get going, because you got to understand my road to get here, because this was not part of my path, and I'm still not sure that I want it to be part of my path. But when I went to school, I went to Southeastern Oklahoma State University. There is no more woke school in Oklahoma than Southeastern Oklahoma State University right now. They're rivaling OU. And we've got a problem. Because if Southeastern Oklahoma State University is that woke, we have major, major problems. And in school, here's what they taught me. They taught me this is a secular government. Founders were deists, atheists. God had nothing to do with it. They were a bunch of slave-owning. You all heard it. So my first year teaching, how did I teach history and government to my kids? I taught it just exactly as they told me to teach it. I taught it as it's a secular document, and what I was spouting was opinion. If you'll notice, the big gap that is missing today amongst our society is this thing called truth. Academia has created what they call reasonable truth, or the truth that can work and be flexible. There is but one truth. And we know where to go find it, don't we? But you'll have to forgive me, because I made many mistakes in my lifetime, and this was one of the biggest ones. When I taught it just exactly as my professors taught me to do it. And after the end of my first year of teaching, I went back to my wife and I said, who is dumb enough to do this twice? I'm going to go back to building houses. I loved building houses. At least at the end of the day, I saw what I had gotten done. Much later on in my career, they sent a student teacher to me once, and he asked me the question right off the bat. First couple of days I had him, and he said, what's teaching really like? And I said, oh, come here, let me show you. And so I took him outside the classroom, and I faced him up against the wall, and I said, now face that wall. And he said, what are you doing? And I said, face the wall. And I said, now bump your head against the wall. And he did, and he looked at me with this weird look, and I said, I'll be back in a few hours. If the wall hasn't moved, come back tomorrow. That's teaching. That's what it's like sometimes. You can't see what you've done until years later when kids come back and talk to you about the great things. My wife was the one who talked me off that cliff. She said, oh, you're doing fine. Come back the next year. And I said, well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to do it different. Something's not right. This isn't working. I'm going to just show them the founders, the primary sources. I'm going to show them their words, and that's how I'm going to teach it. And boy, oh boy, that year I discovered a website called Wall Builders by a gentleman by the name of David Barton. Never heard of him before in my life, and I found this when I was looking for primary sources. And God sent me to that spot, I promise you. Because what I read when I started reading what the founder said, and by the way, there's a reason why professors in schools do not want you to hear the words of the founders, because as he said, there are thousands upon thousands of documents that prove exactly what we're fixing to tell you. because you are not founded in a secular country. The country you are in right now is founded 100%. We teach a course on this. It's called a providential constitution. I take you through 37 specific tenets of the Constitution and match them to the Bible, straight through. It's not that difficult. All you got to do is go look at the words of the founders, and you'll find out pretty quick what they were doing. I was mad enough that I actually went back to my professors and showed them the words of the founders and said, "Why did you not tell me this?" And they would, every one of them, just grin and say, "This is not something you need to know. This is irrelevant." And they could slough it off every single time. I'm telling you, what's happening in our universities is an atrocity. And Oklahoma is sitting on a golden opportunity to yank the chain of our universities and put them right back in line. Because they worship money more than they worship anything else. You want to get their attention? Start talking about taking away money every time. I'll give you an example. This year, we found out about 5 or 6 months ago that the University of Oklahoma had started doing transition surgeries to minors. To date, we have found out that they have done 5 down to the age of 10 in your state. This is the University of Oklahoma. They all took the Hippocratic Oath, and every one of them violated it. And when we came back to them and said, "We'll give you the $39 million, but you're going to stop all of this," their response to us was, "We'll start shutting it down right now." So are they tied to these things that they want to do? They love them. They love their sin. They know exactly what they're doing. But if you'll start pulling their money, you'll get their attention really quick. What I found is that your country is undoubtedly founded and built on this. But let me tell you something. When you start speaking truth, you are going to get shot at. You are going to get called names. You are going to get called everything under the sun. You are going to be attacked. You are going to be called a hypocrite. You are going to be called a homophobe. When I ran 1775 to ban critical race theory in the state of Oklahoma, why are we teaching this to our kids? Why do we feel the necessity to teach to our kids that you are a racist because of your race? Why do we feel the necessity to put pornography in our schools? You have to ask that question. Why would a teacher, why would anyone want to do this to kids? As he said in Bartlesville, why would somebody want to dress like a woman and do that in front of kids? There is one reason, and it's called pedophilia. And that's exactly what they are. Call it for what it is. But when I ran critical race theory, trust me, my email box was full of all kinds of threats and all kinds of name calling, and I don't care because I know the truth, and that's what's going to set us free. So when I started looking at it, I started understanding that in order to win this fight, you and I, have to become educated beyond where we are right now. Wherever you're sitting in this room, you are not in an educated place to go and argue, very few. And so I started actually memorizing because I had all of these things I had to teach the kids, and I found out very quickly that as soon as I teach that our founding fathers were overwhelmingly Christian, who's going to be knocking on my door? Parents who don't want me to teach this. They want to teach what they were taught in college. They want you to teach that we're an atheist nation. Every time. And in order to argue this, guys, I'm sorry, but if you can memorize Scripture, you can memorize the founding fathers. Because it's not good enough for you to pull out your phone and say something and start going down through these things. You got to know them off the top of your head. And there's some convincing ones. Let me tell you something. Noah Webster has probably got the best one out there. Noah Webster, one of your greatest founding fathers that most kids in schools today could not tell you who they are. Noah Webster said, "A brief exposition of the Constitution shall unfold to young people the genuine source of correct Republican principles. And it is the sincere desire of this writer that our citizens should early understand that the genuine source of correct Republican principles is the Bible, or specifically the New Testament or the Christian religion." You can go through some of the quotes that Dr. Piper put up there. You can go through these quotes one by one, and you will find out very fast who our founders were. But I was talking with Bill, and some of y'all have heard some of this that I'm going to say today, but some of this I added too, because I wanted to introduce you to some constitutional principle. Because if in my line of work, we have so many things thrown at us, and the legislators that are in here with me know 2,000 bills get thrown in your face all at one time. You have to read them, discern them, understand them, and go vote on them. And you have to look at them and figure out, is this a good bill or not? And if you don't know the principle, every bill that comes on your desk looks like a good bill. It's okay. I'm a Republican. Don't worry about it. And the reality is that most of the bills that hit our desks are not good bills. They're just not. And they are not because they violate fundamental principles of the Constitution. And let me run through some of those with you today. Is this one working? Let me give you the principle number one. Go ahead and click on it. What are the first three words of the Constitution? We the people. That we have lost that today because I hear legislators now talk about how much power they have. I am one of 49. I have X number. I have all this power over the budget. No, you don't. Because this country is not founded on the principle that you can go through and do whatever you want. So let me ask you the question. Are we a democracy or are we a republic? When somebody talks to you about a democracy, ask them to do this. Pledge to the flag. Matter of fact, y'all stand up and let's pledge and see if you catch it. Stand up. Let's pledge to allegiance to this flag. Everybody ready? Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I just proved my point. You did not pledge yourself to a democracy, to socialism, to an oligarchy. You pledged yourself to what? A republic. So we're ruled by elected officials. So then who controls those elected officials? We the people. I want you to look at this. Lincoln defined this better than anybody else when he said, we the people are the rightful masters of Congress and the courts. Not to not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who would pervert the Constitution. Is our Constitution being perverted today? Anytime you have someone who says that you can be sued and legally liable because you did not use the correct pronouns that somebody wants you to live under their fantasy, we have a perverted Constitution. You are actually protected from that because of the First Amendment. But we the people control that. And we the people are getting fed up with this thing. Amen. And at a state level, we the people have to stand up. Go to the next slide. I keep messing with that stupid thing. It was kind of funny. Somebody, right after the Constitution had been written, they asked Benjamin Franklin, Dr. Franklin, do we have a monarchy or a democracy? He said, you have a republic if you can keep it. Because the problem with a republic and all these things thrown out is people have to be the ones that step up and step forward. If the citizenry hides and comes down below and will not stand up and will not go after what's going on, if we will not have loud mouths, as Dr. Piper said, they'll run over you. And they're already there. Oklahoma's the reddest state reddest of the red. How many times have you heard that? We are not. I'm telling you now, our leadership in Oklahoma, in the legislature, is as left as most of the Democrats are. The only distinction is they have an R beside their name. The group that Danny Williams is talking about has been meeting for quite some time here because we sensed about 2 years ago something's not right. If we're the reddest state in the red, why did I have to fight so hard to ban CRT? Why did I have to water that bill down so much? Because the original way that I had that bill drafted, we could have slammed the door on this thing at higher ed and in common ed. Why, when I wrote a bill, 615, Danny Williams and I wrote a bill to say, if you're a boy, you go to the boys' bathroom. If you're a girl, you go to the girls' bathroom. Why did the Attorney General have to come to the Pro Tem's office and say, why have you not heard this bill? Hear it now. Why are we allowing school indoctrination to happen in government schools? They're government schools. He and I tell them what they can and cannot do and say. We've had the bills. We've had everything we've needed to stop. And so you have to start asking yourself that question. Is that me doing that? Is it ready? Bill brought this up earlier. Exodus 18. Here's where you have to stand in, and here's your rubric, as it were, that I would have given my kids to write by how you vote. Some of you have heard the story, so I'm going to give you the whole thing. But Moses was struggling because they were overloading him, if you'll recall. They kept coming to him with all of their problems, and he couldn't figure it out. And his father-in-law, which don't tell my father-in-law he can give me good advice. I don't really need that kind of scrutiny in my life right now. But he came to him and he said, listen, you're messing up. And here's the advice he gave him. He said, but select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. That's a republic. That's how he was explaining it. Now, look at that first one for a second, but select capable men. Does Joe Biden fit that? So I think we probably can get rid of this one now. Who's the guy in, is it Pennsylvania that's running? They just had the debate over. Does he fit that? No. And I'll tell you this much. It's not illegal. We don't want to make it illegal to be a liberal in the United States. It's just stupid. And it means that automatically, if you choose the liberal socialist view on things, you don't meet that right there. Men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain. That's your standard. When you're looking at candidates, we the people have to be the judge of who that is. You're the one who puts them in office. One of my favorite quotes, I said it often so much, I have it memorized and I say it everywhere I go. So if you've heard this, forgive me, because it's a great quote. But James A. Garfield, 20th President of the United States, he summed this up perfectly. Any of y'all familiar with James A. Garfield? Garfield was phenomenal. Actually preached revivals while he was president. He's one of the most, I would have loved to have seen 8 years of James A. Garfield, because you would have seen some interesting things happen. But he had one of the most profound prophetic quotes you've ever heard. He said, now more than ever, the people are responsible for the character of their Congress. See, he understood principle number one, didn't he? If that body be ignorant, reckless, and corrupt, it is because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. But if that body be intelligent, brave, and pure, it is because the people demand such high qualities from their elected legislature. And this is the best part of the quote. He said, if the day shall come when America is no longer found to be a great nation, it will be because those responsible for controlling the enterprise and the morality did not aid in controlling its political forces. Man, that's profound. It describes America to a T. If Oklahoma, the last light in America, falls, so goes the nation. We're not the reddest of the red. We could be. We got lots of candidates out there. But we tend to sit back. And I'll tell you, I saw it on Facebook the other day. I was listening to a friend of mine, Jake Merrick, who lost his election. And Jake's a patriot. And Jake asked the question, what's it going to take to wake the people up? And I went through and read the comments on it. And it was fascinating because everyone admitted Republicans don't show up. We're conservative, which generally means we don't want to get into everything. It's kind of like Dr. Piper said, what we really want is for them to leave me alone. But you've reached a point in your history where the government's not going to leave you alone. You can't sit back anymore. You have to take this thing by the reins in every town in Oklahoma. And I'm not saying run for state senate or state rep. If you want to take this thing back, do it like the founders did. Take your school boards, take your city councils back. Because it's just around the corner, and you're going to be the last line of defense to whenever these things come down the pipe. And it's incumbent upon us as Christians to say, no, this will not happen in my town. If you had righteous men in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, they would have told the perverts, if you come out here on the streets dressed like that, we will arrest you for indecent exposure to a minor. That's child abuse. That's pedophilia. They ought to be in jail. I want you to look at some of this. These are some of the great quotes that you need to understand and know. But I love this one by James Madison. I just found this the other day, and I thought, I got to put this in there. He said, we have staked the whole future of American civilization not upon the power of government, far from it. Boy, that doesn't explain us, does it, right now? We keep looking to government for answers, and yet the church is sitting idly by waiting when the church needs to take its stand, its proper place in society. We have staked the future of all our political institutions upon the capacity of mankind to self-government, upon the capacity of each and all of us to govern ourselves and to control ourselves, to sustain ourselves according to what? The Ten Commandments. And yet in Oklahoma, the year before Danny and I got there, what did they do with the Ten Commandments that were sitting on the Capitol lawn? Bill had you a picture of it. They waited till what, 2 in the morning, I believe? Why wait till 2 in the morning to go get the Ten Commandments off the Capitol lawn? So that there's no resistance. Listen to me for a second. I've been thinking about this. I was pondering this the other day. There is one thing right now keeping this government from completely taking it over as a communist nation. One thing only. It's the Second Amendment. Is the government scared of you having a gun? You bet they are. Why do you think it is that they are spending so much time trying to take it away? We have people out there now calling for the repeal of the Second Amendment because they understand that a defenseless society is a takeable society. Go back to Hitler in 1928. One of the first things he passed as chancellor was a restriction on gun rights for Jews. 6 million Jews dead. How many rebellions did you have? There's a few. I believe they called it the warmer rebellion. They were using pitchforks and clubs against guns. You have to ask the question, how close are we? I'm telling you now, we're closer than ever. Reddest of the red. But I promise you this year, you're going to have people who are going to pay attention or who are going to file bills to claw back constitutional carry. Why would they want to do that? Why do they want to disarm their citizens? We heard it the other day. Somebody in office said that they're going to file, this was Republicans, said that they would file a bill to remove the exception in our abortion laws to allow for rape and incest. Can we talk about that for just a minute? We just had one of the biggest court cases in American history. You won. Now it's turned over to the states to say abortion is wrong. There is an unavoidable truth that abortion is wrong. And you now have a Republican in Oklahoma who has said, we're going to file a bill to say, bring in the exception for rape and incest. Let me ask you a question. Does the manner in which you're conceived make you more or less human? You can't allow this to happen. And you got to ask yourself the question, why would we back up? Democrats in Oklahoma, in our legislature, mean nothing to us. There are 9 of them in the Senate. We don't care what they say. They're just annoying. The House is the same way. So if you're not getting laws that do exactly what we're supposed to do, who's at fault? It's Republicans. It's exactly right. I'll put it to you this way. If you have right now people in Oklahoma who are being required and being forced to get a vaccination in order to keep their job, don't blame Democrats. That's on us. That's our fault. I want you to look at some key verses. Second Chronicles 7:14. I was looking through this trying to figure out who is we the people. And I kind of stumbled upon a lot more than this, but these were the ones that stuck out. 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and turn from their wicked ways, I will forgive their sin and will heal their land. Ezekiel 22:30. Now listen to this, because this is convicting to me, because this is where I was. And I'll tell that story in just a minute. I searched for a man among them who would build up a wall and stand in the gap for me for the land so that I would not destroy it, but I found no one. How close are we to that? Reddest of the red. Let me do this last one and then I'll go from there. This is one of my favorite. Esther 4:13-14. I got the chance to speak at the Pregnancy Center banquet this year in Bryan County, and I brought this to them. Then Mordecai told them to reply to Esther, do not imagine that you in the king's palace can escape any more than all the Jews. Do not make the mistake of thinking you live in Oklahoma, you don't have to show up, we're never going to turn red, we're never going to have these things in our schools, we're never going to have these things at our universities, we're never going to back up on abortion. Do not trap yourself. Because he said, for if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise from the Jews from another place, and you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not attained royalty for such a time as this? You and I were called for right now. I've always wondered, I've looked back at history and I've realized there were generations that could take it easy in American history, right? We've studied all of those things. And then there were generations that God called them and said, give it all. What did the founding fathers say in the Declaration of Independence? We pledge what? Our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. They understood this. The founders understood they were brought by God, called by God, for just a time just like this. You are not here by accident. God did not call you to here just to take you back home to heaven. He put you on this place at this time, and I do not believe in accidents. I had years, well, I'll put it to you this way. At my own wedding, I begged my wife to elope because I didn't want to stand in front of people and talk. I didn't want to stand in front of that crowd. I mean, I was one of the shyest people you've ever met in your life. And Bill Ledbetter kept preaching these messages, and he was staring at me the whole time that he was doing them about, it was a whole series called Carry Your Cross. I don't know if you remember the series. Don't ever preach it again. And I kept thinking, why is he pushing me? I don't want to get involved in this. I know the truth. I had studied it by that time for 10 years. I know the truth. I was teaching the truth in my classroom. Why is he pushing me to get involved? But I remember the day very well when God called me and said, you're going to follow me or I'm going to find somebody else. And so I went to the front, and I didn't go to him. I went to the altar. And I said, Lord, okay, I'll surrender. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. I don't care what it is. Just please don't make me speak in front of people. I hate doing that. I think it was 1 week. I don't even know if he waited that long. Bill Ledbetter calls me up and says, you got to understand, I can see Bill Ledbetter doing this on the phone. Brother, did I get it right? We're going to be doing a conference, and I want you to speak and him see it. I said, well, okay. I told the Lord I'd do it. So, yeah, I'll do it. How many people are you talking? He said, probably about 2,000 or 3,000. And I said, well, it's a good thing the Lord has a sense of humor. And so one thing led to another, and I finally felt called to run for the Senate. I didn't want it. I'll tell you right now, I don't want it right now. Because I spend a lot of time away from two of the most precious girls you've ever seen. But God called me for such a time as this. And I told my wife, because she didn't want to do it either. And I told my wife, I said, listen, I'm not going without you. And I said, and we'll ignore God. I'll tell God no if that's where we have to be. But I said, you need to understand there will be consequences. He's taken... He's taken me to the woodshed many times. And I understand now what it means to tell God no. I don't want to do it again. I've sat on the side of a highway after watching two boys choke on their mind. Son, you're either going to follow me or I'm going to take you out. And so I don't want to go back. But if you want me to, if you can't go with me in this journey, then I'll tell the Lord no. And we'll just see where he takes us, how bad the woodshed is. And it was 1 week to the day. I remember going out in my shop, and I was talking to my dad, and I said, Dad, why would God call me to do something that's going to cause me to get a divorce? I can't understand the two. And my dad said, son, you're going to let this go, and you're going to give it over to God, or this is going to drive you crazy. And so I did. And I prayed that evening, and I said, Lord, if you want me to run, you're going to talk my wife into it, and I don't envy you in this task. Because that woman is hard-headed. If you want to know why I can argue so well on the floor, look at who I'm married to. But 1 week to the day, laying on the bed reading a book, she comes in and sits down next to me. I mean, this is the same woman who, when I said, would you at least pray about this, said, no, I don't want to pray about it. Came in, laid down on the bed, and said, all right, been praying. You're called. You need to go. And I said, how long and how far? And she said, till God tells you to quit. And so we'll answer this call until God tells me to quit. I can promise you everyone in this room is called to do something for God in this country in this time right now. No question. And yes, many of you are called to go bring a message on Sunday morning. But that ain't it. You are called to stand up and teach these principles that we're talking to you about right now from your pulpit. I hate to break that to you. But if you're sitting in this room, God's calling you to stand up and speak about your country from a biblical point of view and teach your congregation how to go stand up for Christ. I'm going to skip this because I'm running out of time. Well, I lost it somehow. There it goes. Now let me get to the meat of what I want to talk about. There is a vacuum right now at the Oklahoma State Capitol. And here's what I've learned. Any vacuum left by the church, the devil will occupy. You know what a vacuum is? It's a space with no oxygen, right? Space is a vacuum. Any vacuum that we leave unattended, unattained, there is a guarantee, it's not even a question, the devil is going to occupy it. When I first got in office, Anita, my EA, warned me and said, now at some point, there's going to be devil worshipers here in the Capitol they sit in the middle rotunda and they play their music. And she said, you can hear it echoing all throughout the Capitol. And so we stopped and prayed right then, and we said, Father, this is your house. This is not the devil's house. Every floor of this rotunda, from the top to the bottom, to every room, to every end, you occupy it. And don't let the devil in. Did you know we've never had them come up there and do that ever again? And it's just a simple prayer. It's just because we showed up and we said, no, not here in this house. And so there is a vacuum that has been left. And let me ask you an important question. What has happened to the Christian lobby? Oh, if I asked that to some pastors, they would say there should never be a Christian lobby. You don't need to get involved in that stuff. Why? Well, my tithe might go down. It will, I promise you. When we start winning these battles, the devil's going to throw every pitchfork he can at you, and the first one's going to be financials. But one thing I know is that when God calls you, he pays the way. May not be everything you want, but he does pay the way. Well, let's talk about this. In 2016, this was 2 years before I ran, the legislature had some 26, and it may not be exactly 26, so don't hold me to that. But we were tracking several religious liberty type bills. Pro-life, First Amendment protections, many pro-life bills. And there was a representative who vented and said, we had 26 bills. Do you know how many calls I've gotten from pastors or Christians encouraging me to run that bill? 0. And as a result, how many of those bills passed? 0. Not one. Matter of fact, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he was so frustrated he didn't run again because he was so frustrated with this. Let me put it to you this way. The bill I was talking about where we were talking about OU and we put in the language and said, OU can't do any transgender procedures at all, and they said yes. They've shut it all down. The balcony above us, when we sit down in the well of the Senate, was full of white coats. Now, they weren't doctors. They were handing coats out as they came in to look like doctors, but every one of them had rainbow masks and stickers on. And every time we would make an argument or say something about, gender confusion or how bad it was or how evil it is to go and put a child under the knife, they would gasp, and I heard cussing, and I heard swearing, and I had everything under the sun. That balcony was full. When we ran 1775, you know how many people were in that balcony? 1 or 2. When we ran pro-life bills, it's full, but not of Christians. It's full of people up there trying to argue, and they're there lobbying for the right to murder their child. When we run 615, the bill that says boys got to go to boys' bathrooms and girls got to go to girls' bathrooms, you know how many people were up there? Christians? None. Remember what I said. Whatever vacuum the Christian lobby leaves, the devil's going to occupy it every time. So let's talk about the history of it. The need for Christian lobby didn't really exist when our country began. Anybody know why? 98.4% of the population, according to wall builders, was Christian. I mean, that's why you have those quotes from the founding fathers. Our Constitution was created for a moral and religious society. It is wholly inadequate for that of any other, right? Why is that? Well, we're all Christians. We can self-govern, right? We have the laws. We go look at these Bibles. I heard Dr. Piper say, it was years ago, he said, if you can't live by 10 simple rules, you'll die by 1,000 simple cuts. I think that's how you said it. I may have butchered it. I got close. People's expectation of somebody running for government at that time was, you shall be Christian and you shall legislate beyond what you tell me you're going to do. When I ran, I tried to explain to people, I'm not giving you political summaries of a wish list. This is my work list. These are the things I'm going to work on. And I've done it. I can go back to them right now and created stuff to go show people. Here's what I've done plus some. When I ran, do you really think I thought that I was going to run a bill banning CRT? No. I ran on ending abortion, and I've run lots of bills to do it. I ran on creating more vocational skills for our kids so that they don't go to colleges and get indoctrinated. And I worked on that. You think I really planned on going up there and running a bill to say that no school is allowed to indoctrinate kids into socialism, communism, Marxism, or anti-American hatred? No, I had no idea. But when God put something in front of me, what did I do? Picked it up and we ran with it. Danny Williams is no different. And you have a core group that's moving that way. John Adams, well, there it is. John Adams said, our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate for the government of any other. You brought up John Jay, and you didn't quote him. Boy, I was hoping you would. I used to throw this one at my kids. I loved it because I don't remember who it was. Dr. He was the heart surgeon that ran in 16 with Trump and then turned around. Ben Carson. I remember seeing Ben Carson up there endorsing Trump, and I thought, this is turned upside down. Because I was the same way. I was a Ted Cruz guy. And when Ben Carson did that, it perked me up to think something's different here. Because if Ben Carson is endorsing him, I believe in him. But he talked about how he didn't believe you could be a Muslim and operate under the Constitution, and he's correct. And my kids started talking to me about this, and I said, well, let me show you a couple quotes. This was one of them I showed them. John Jay said, Providence has given to our people the choice of their ruler, and it is the duty as well as the privilege and interest of our what? Christian nation to prefer Christians for their rulers. Boy, that's pretty powerful. John Quincy Adams said, it is not that in the chain of human events the birth of the nation is indissolubly linked with the birthday of the Savior, that it forms the leading event in the progress of the gospel dispensation. Is it not that the Declaration of Independence first organized the social compact on the foundation of the Redeemer's mission upon this earth? There's no hiding from that. When I showed that to my professors, there was a blank look on their face because they don't want to see. They've convinced themselves of the lie, and they like the lie. The lie is a lot more fun for them. So the Great Reset, this ought to get your attention. Some study, and the Barna Institute came up and said, today 176 Americans claim to be Christian. That's 69% of the population. That's a far cry from 98.4, but, okay, 69%. Right? The sleeping giant. What happens if the sleeping giant, yet only 6% of U.S. adult Christians possess